More on the administration perspective on spending, trade, the Iran decision, and more. Steve Mnuchin is the President's Treasury Secretary. Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here.
Good to see you here, Brian.
We expected the Iran announcement. I think most people did. But the specifics here, what are the days that you have before the next tough round of sanctions really kick in?
Well, Brett, the sanctions actually kick in now, but there's what we call a wind down and maintenance period. So we wanted to be very careful. People can't do new business, but people who have existing business will have a period of time. There's two tranches, a 90-day tranche for most things, and then a 180-day tranche for energy-related and miscellaneous items. And we wanted to be careful on the energy markets, that we had an orderly transition away from Iranian oil.
So essentially, if you get to that point before this 180 days is essentially a time that it could be a renegotiation?
Well, I think we're ready to renegotiate now. I think the president's been very clear since the campaign and since he came into office. This is a bad deal. He's focused on the term of the deal. We don't want Iran ever to have nuclear weapons. He's focused on the ballistic missiles, and he's focused on the state-sponsored terrorism. We've had lots of discussions with our allies. We'll continue to do that, and I and Secretary Pompeo have had a lot of discussions, and we'll continue to do that with our counterparts.
So you've heard the criticism from your opponents politically who say, listen, if you tear up this deal from a previous administration, what's to say to foreign countries and leaders that any deal done by one administration really doesn't stick to the next administration?
Well, Brett, let's be clear. This wasn't necessarily a legally binding deal. The previous administration never took this to Congress to have it passed, and this was just a bad deal. The president has been very clear. We don't want a situation where Iran can have nuclear weapons now or in the future. And if Iran is sincere in wanting to become a member of the world community, they should sit down and negotiate reasonable terms.
You had European allies filter in here one after another, French president, German chancellor, and the foreign secretary from Britain, who said this just this week.
You have to answer the question, what next? What if the Iranians do rush for a nuclear weapon? Are we seriously saying that we're going to bomb those facilities? Is that really a realistic possibility? Or do we work with what we've got and push back on Iran together?
So the what next, I guess, is what most people are asking.
Well, what next is the sanctions are going in place, and the sanctions worked last time. But let me also be clear, and the president didn't come into office right away and terminate this. He was very careful. We've had discussions. He's been very transparent. He made it clear 3 months ago this was the last time he was going to sign the waivers unless there was a new deal. And, we'll continue to work with our allies. So what's next is the sanctions go in place. We're going to cut off the money to fund Iran's bad behavior, and we're going to work with our allies to fix the deal and get a new deal.
Sure, but Iran is talking to the rest of the European allies to somehow string something together between them. With the U.S. not at the table in that negotiation, how can you, one, ensure that the sanctions are tough enough that you move Iran to action if the other allies are not buying in?
Well, Brett, these are very, very tough sanctions. So although we have a wind-down period and we are being careful with the transition, I would also say there are primary sanctions and secondary sanctions. And these will go after the entire U.S. dollar financial system here and globally. So our objective is to make sure that we cut off the money to Iran, and these are very powerful tools that we will enforce.
So you're saying Iran will feel it?
Absolutely.
And the economy there not doing that great anyway?
It's not doing very well. Their currency is depreciated substantially. And as the president was very clear, he wants to support the people of Iran. There are a lot of people there. They can have a bright future, but their bright future doesn't include nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles, and state-sponsored terrorism.
Here is the Senate Minority Leader on this deal.
You're making it harder to go after Hezbollah. You're making it harder to go after Iranian activities that are really dangerous. And you're probably making it harder to come to a North Korea deal.
And the former president, who weighed in with a statement, President Obama saying, at a time when we are all rooting for diplomacy with North Korea to succeed, walking away from JCPOA risks losing a deal that accomplishes with Iran the very outcome that we are pursuing with the North Koreans. On that specific point, on North Korea, do you think North Korea looks at this and interprets anything with the kind of pulling out of the Iran deal?
Brett, the president is determined to make sure Americans are safe. If the president listened to all the professionals, he wouldn't have been tough on North Korea. We put very strong sanctions on North Korea. Our maximum pressure campaign is a major reason why they are negotiating. 6 months ago, people said that the president was being too tough on North Korea. Now he's sitting down and he's willing to negotiate. So the president is determined, whether it's North Korea or Iran, to protect the American people. And the previous deal did not protect the American people. It would have been easy for him to kick this down the road the way people did with North Korea. The president's not willing to do that.
Secretary Pompeo is there tonight in Pyongyang, the president announcing that. Is the hope that he comes back with the 3 Americans that have been held hostage there?
I think we all hope he does.
And last thing, you just came back from China. The press write-up of that trip was pretty gloomy. Your take on where that trade negotiation is going? I mean, it's not easy stuff.
Brett, you know, these are also complicated issues, and the president has been very clear, going back to the campaign in office, the trade deficit is too big, that China companies have the ability to do business here. Our companies don't have the same reciprocal treatment. Now, the good news is, since Mar-a-Lago, when President Trump and President Xi first spoke, we agreed the common objective was to reduce the trade deficit and make it reciprocal. We haven't made enough progress in the last year. We went over there. I think our delegation was very clear in going through these issues. We came back, we briefed the president. He's very supportive of our position, and I look forward to the vice premier coming here and continuing our negotiations. The president is determined that we will have a more level and balanced, fair and free and reciprocal trading relationship, and that's our objective.
So you're looking forward to round 2?
I am indeed.
Mr. Secretary, we appreciate your time.
Good to see you.
Thanks a lot.